Hi guys, welcome back to Noctis Gaming. On this video I wanted to talk about the War of the Rohirrim. So as we know, unless you've been living under a rock, Games Workshop are releasing a new edition of Battles of Middle-earth, starting with a set called The War of the Rohirrim. And there's also a new animated film coming out with the same name. So what I wanted to do today is to actually talk about a bit of the lore behind the war. Spoiler warning, some of these events probably will happen in the film. So if you want that to be a surprise, then please turn off now. The War of the Rohirrim is an often overlooked yet critical chapter in the ancient history of Middle-earth. Set centuries before the events of The Lord of the Rings, this war cemented the legacy of Rohan and its horse lords, the Rohirrim, a proud people whose destiny would shape the fate of the Free Peoples. The year is 2758 of the Third Age, and Rohan, the Riddermark, is still young. It had been nearly 500 years since Jarl the Young had led his people from the north and claimed the plains of Calanodhorn as their home. Gondor had granted them this land as a reward for their aid in battle, and the Rohirrim had grown strong, their cavalry becoming the envy of all who laid eyes upon them. Yet these were not peaceful times. While Gondor struggled to fend off invaders from the east and south, Rohan's northern borders were increasingly under threat from old enemies, the Dunlingdons, bitter hillmen descended from the ancient people who once roamed these very lands. Driven from their homes and displaced by the arrival of the Rohirrim, the Dunlingdons bore a deep and abiding hatred for the Horse Lords. The mountainous lands of Dunland, lying west of the Gap of Rohan, bred a fierce people who longed to reclaim what they believed was rightfully theirs. The War of the Rohirrim was sparked not by open conquest, but by desperation. In the year 2758, the long winter descended upon Rohan, one of the hardest in living memory. Blizzards swept the plains, and food became scarce. Crops withered under frost, and livestock perished in the snow. Famine gripped the land, and the people of Rohan, once proud and prosperous, began to suffer. Sensing weakness, the Dunlingdons, under the leadership of a cunning and ruthless chieftain named Wulf, seized their opportunity. Wulf was no ordinary leader. He was a man with a personal vendetta. His father had been slain by the Rohirrim during one of the many skirmishes among their shared borders. Now, with Rohan weakened, Wulf saw his chance for revenge and conquest. He forged an alliance with the Corsairs of Umbar, pirates and raiders from the south who had long harried Gondor's coasts. With their ships, Wulf and his army sailed up the Anduin River, striking swiftly and with devastating force. In the dead of winter, they launched their invasion of Rohan, catching its people completely off guard. King Helm Hammerhand, the ruler of Rohan at the time, was a man of immense strength and stern resolve. Yet even he was unprepared for the ferocity of Wulf's assault. The Dunlingdons swarmed across the plains, taking advantage of the deep snow that crippled the mobility of Rohan's famed cavalry. Starving and scattered, the Rohirrim could not muster a strong defence. Wulf's forces marched on Edoras, the golden hall of the kings. Helm and his warriors fought valiantly, but they were outnumbered and overwhelmed. Edoras fell, and Wulf declared himself king, taking the throne and the golden hall for himself. Helm and the remnants of his forces were forced to flee to the Hornburg, the fortress nestled in the deep valleys of the White Mountains. It would later become known as Helm's Deep, but at that time it was simply a last bastion of hope for a people on the brink of destruction. For months, Rohan was in a state of collapse. Wolf ruled from Edoras, and the Dunlingdons ravaged the lands, taking what little food and supplies remained. The people of Rohan scattered into the wilderness, hiding in caves and hollows to escape the brutality of their conquerors. Yet King Helm did not surrender. The long winter continued, and Helm's people huddled in Hornburg, cold and hungry. Yet Helm's resolve was unbreakable. Legend tells that during this time, he would don his great war horn and stalk the snow-covered plains alone, slaying Dunlingdon soldiers with nothing but his bare hands. His wrath was so fierce that the Dunlingdons believed him to be an immortal spectre, and they began to fear the sound of his horn, which would echo in the dead of night before one of their warriors mysteriously disappeared. However, even a man as strong as Helm Hammerhand could not stand forever. The winter took its toll. Both his sons, Haleth and Hammer, perished during this time, and the people's spirits waned. Helm himself was said to have died standing, frozen in place, still upright with his war horn in hand. His body was found by his people, unyielding in death as he had been in life. Though Helm had fallen, his defiance had kept Rohan's spirits alive. As the winter began to thaw, so did the fortunes of the Rohirrim. Frilaf Hildson, Helm's nephew and the rightful heir, gathered what remained of the scattered people of Rohan. In a daring raid, Frilaf led a small force to Edoras and slew Wolf, reclaiming the Golden Hall for the Rohirrim. The Dunlingdons, leaderless and demoralised, were driven back. Frilaf's forces, bolstered by reinforcements from Gondor, began to reclaim their homeland. Slowly, the Rohirrim rebuilt their strength, and by the year's end, the Dunlingdons were forced to retreat back into their mountain strongholds, unable to hold the fertile lands of the Riddermark. The War of the Rohirrim left Rohan devastated but unbroken. Helm's courage and sacrifice became the stuff of legend, and the fortress of Hornburg was thereafter known as Helm's Deep in his honour. His spirit was said to haunt the keep, and the valley below was called the Helm's Dyke. His descendants would rule for generations, and the line of kings remained unbroken through Helm's nephew Frilaf, who restored the kingdom to its former glory. The war also deepened the enmity between the Rohirrim and the Dunlingdons, a hatred that would persist for centuries. The Dunlingdons would never forget their defeat and would rise again to threaten Rohan during the War of the Rings. But Helm's legacy and the strength of his people ensured that Rohan would endure. In the annals of Middle-earth, the War of the Rohirrim stands as a testament to the resilience of the Rohirrim and the indomitable will of their kings. It is a story of survival against impossible odds, where even in the darkest of winters, hope and courage could still bloom.